We have a wild Oilers update coming out of practice from yesterday afternoon with some news some of us absolutely do not want to hear when it comes to Connor McDavid and Darnell Nurse. But we'll get all that more today on Oilers Digest. But first, if you haven't subscribed to the channel already, make sure you do so. If you're part of the 82% that not have subscribed to the channel yet, folks, what are you waiting for? We are almost at the halfway point of the NHL year, and we're almost at Christmas time too as a bonus. But today, before we get into the practice news, this video is brought to you by our friends over at Rentals.ca, who are proud supporters of Team Canada. While they've been supporting our national team defend their home court in international competition, they've also been helping thousands of Canadians find their home floor all across the country. Whether you're in Toronto, Vancouver, Montreal, Calgary, Halifax, Winnipeg, Mississauga, Edmonton, Victoria, or St. John's, from coast to coast, Rentals.ca have a ton of options to find the perfect place and price for you. Their website is clean and easy to use, and you can pinpoint exactly on the map where you want to move, finding all of the options in your area. Find your home court with Rentals.ca and check out their website in the pinned comment down below the video, or also in the description, which you can also find below. And again, shout out to Rentals.ca for supporting us, Team Canada, and for helping you guys find the best rentals all across our great country. But a close call yesterday afternoon. The Edmonton Oilers had a practice after the very unfortunate 6-5 loss to the Florida Panthers, and during a routine drill, Connor McDavid and Darnell Nurse accidentally collided, sending the Oilers star forward to the ice. Nurse immediately checked on McDavid, who gingerly got to his feet before leaving practice as a precaution. Now, I know McDavid and Nurse both missed some time this season, so obviously that's not something you want to see. But for McDavid to leave the ice very gingerly, of course on his own power, but he's not a type of guy to sort of back down from that whatsoever. Dust himself off and get back to the drill. But to see him go back into the locker room, it is a little bit concerning. But from Daniel Nugent-Hopkins here of The Athletic, of course, from Oilers practice, McDavid and Nurse collided midway through, 97 left, and didn't return. But Kris Knoblauch said, "I have not talked to head therapist TD4s, but I think he's doing all right. If he wasn't, I'm sure I would have gotten an update right away." And now that is very, very encouraging news when it comes to, Connor McDavid's status. And Kris Knoblauch also had this to say. He said, when it comes to something like that, you hold your breath. It wasn't like two guys chasing into the wall. It was just one guy turning left, the other turned right, and if they ran into each other, I think everyone's okay. And of course, we haven't gotten an update since then. So Connor McDavid and Darnell Nurse, you got to think about them him as well in this scenario. Of course, he had that concussion earlier in the season after suffering that hit from Ryan Reeves. But Nurse, if you went up to go check on Connor McDavid right away, he should be fine. But Connor McDavid's status for tomorrow's game, of course, we're not 100% confirmed, but he should be good, knowing how Connor McDavid is and how competitive he absolutely is when it comes to not wanting to miss time. Of course, earlier in the season after suffering that injury against Columbus, he was expected to miss up to 2 to 3 weeks, but he was only out there after a week. He is just a machine. But Zach Hyman missed practice because of an appointment. His nose is broken after being hit with a deflected Evan Bouchard shot Monday night, again, of course, against the Florida Panthers. Of course, Bouchard's shot deflected into Zach Hyman's visor, and the visor sort of pushed down on the nose. Of course, Zach Hyman skated off rather quickly. And Knoblauch had this to say: he doesn't look any better, but Knoblauch said Hyman doesn't have a concussion, which is fantastic news, and expects him to play Thursday against the Boston Bruins. Of course, Hyman, another player, came off of injury, and he's been on an absolute heater since. Almost, he kind of took that Team Canada snub to heart. Same with Stuart Skinner, of course, except for Monday night, but a bit of an outlier. But Victor Arvidsson took Zach Hyman's spot in the line rushers at practice, his first with the team since being injured November 12th versus the New York Islanders. So almost a full month and a little bit that he's missed. Of course, last week he was in practice. Of course, he took the place of Evan Bouchard next to Matthias Ekholm, but that was sort of getting Victor Arvidsson back into speed. Arvidsson has missed the last 15 games. Knoblauch said it is possible he plays Thursday. He's expected to return before the holiday break begins on Sunday. And just looking at the lines and pairings at Tuesday's practice here from Oilers TV's own Tony Brar. No Hyman on the ice, of course, but Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, Connor McDavid, and Victor Arvidsson taking the place of Zach Hyman, Vasily Podkolzin, and Leon Draisaitl in, Kasperi Kapanen, Matisse Janmark, Adam Henrique, Connor Brown, and finally on the fourth line here, Jeff Skinner, which is a very odd placement for Jeff Skinner, could especially when he was brought in to score next to Derek Ryan and Corey Perry on the back end here. Nothing has changed with Matisse Heckel and Evan Bouchard, Darnell Nurse and Brett Kulak, Troy Stetcher and Ty Emberson, of course, the dynamic duo in net with Stuart Skinner and Calvin Pickard. So nothing's really changed except Skinner on the fourth line needs sort of that bottom six switch up. Of course, the bottom six was caved in against the Florida Panthers last night, so Kris Knoblauch trying to spark something there to get something throughout all four lines. But regarding Arvidsson, Knoblauch says he likes the way his top six is playing. He added he wants to monitor Arvidsson's minutes when he does return and wants more out of his bottom six. That's a good hint Arvidsson could start there. Now, I know you're asking, why start Arvidsson in the bottom six when he was paired up next to, Leon Draisaitl and Jeff Skinner to start the year. You can see the numbers with Podkolzin, Arvidsson, and Draisaitl, phenomenal, and even, Podkolzin and Arvidsson on their own. And lastly, there Podkolzin and Draisaitl. Now, Podkolzin and Draisaitl are sort of tied at the hip there, but I think Draisaitl does play with two, very speedy players right next to him. Of course, over the years, you can say the names like Kyler Yamamoto. He's been phenomenal with Draisaitl. Ryan McLeod, Dylan Holloway, need I go on? So I would keep Kapanen there, but I would move, Victor Arvidsson to maybe the third line, Nick, a Skinner, Henrique, and Arvidsson line. I mean, you got to beef up your bottom six somehow, and that third line has been, most nights one of the Oilers' worst lines, when really your bottom six should be, chewing numbers or chewing, ice time and time on ice away from the opposition to sort of get your top six back into gear. Of course, I'm just stating the obvious, but when it comes to, the stats between Arvidsson, Skinner, and Henrique, very limited time together, but, you can see there was the duos on their own. Arvidsson and Skinner have been, somewhat decent together. 68% Corsi 4 percentage. Arvidsson and Henrique, 67% Corsi 4 percentage. Of course, they did give up a goal together. And, lastly here, Arvidsson on his own has been fine. But Skinner and Henrique together, not so fine. So I think the addition of Victor Arvidsson that, can bring just, a little more offense to that line. Of course, Jeff Skinner is no slouch on his own, but I think it would be a really good line, and sort of my idea here for the four lines that can, create somewhat of a very deep lineup for the Edmonton Oilers. Of course, you keep that top six intact with Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, Connor McDavid, and Zach Hyman, and Podkolzin, Draisaitl, in Kapanen. I know many would switch Kapanen in Arvidsson, but I think this just creates a very deep Oiler roster. And then Skinner, Henrique, and Arvidsson, and lastly here, Corey Perry, and then you throw, Matisse Janmark in that fourth line center spot, and then Connor Brown, sort of shuffling Derek Ryan out of that spot. No disrespect to Derek Ryan at all. He's great on the dot, but the game has sort of passed him by. He's getting a little up there in age. And of course, at the bottom here, still injured / future call-up, Evander Kane could, slot somewhere in this lineup, up and down the lineup. He could be top six. He could be bottom six. It all depends on where Kris Knoblauch does want to put him. And then Noah Phillip, who we did see earlier in the season, I think he'd be a phenomenal spot on that fourth line center spot, replacing Matisse Janmark. He impressed me in the preseason very much so. And, I think there's no more time for him to develop down in Bakersfield. I think you need to get him up here ASAP on this Oilers roster to, again, make it as deep as you can and bolster that bottom six. Now, just looking, at the month of December as a whole, let's just take a step back for a minute. Of course, Oilers day off, so a December to remember. Of course, only 2 games they've lost so far in the month of December. The 1-0 loss to the Vegas Golden Knights, and lastly here, the 6-5 loss to the Florida Panthers. But, a 5-game win streak is a 5-game win streak against Columbus, St. Louis, Tampa Bay, Minnesota, in Vegas. Those last 3 there, Tampa Bay, Minnesota, in Vegas, no slouches at all. Just looking up here at the future games, of course, the Boston Bruins tomorrow night, and then the San Jose Sharks in Ottawa on a back-to-back. They're the 22nd or 21st and 22nd. Of course, there's the Christmas / holiday break for the NHL, and then they have a back-to-back. They head out west to California, taking on the Los Angeles Kings and the Anaheim Ducks before, calling a curtain on the year. New Year's Eve, they are playing against the Utah Hockey Club. So Still got lots of hockey before the end of the year. Of course, we still have the World Juniors to look forward to with Bo Akey on Team Canada. But that is it for today's video. Let me know down in the comments. Are you worried about Connor McDavid at all? And what would your ideal Oiler lineup look like? I'm excited to see what you folks have in store for the Edmonton Oilers. And again, make sure to subscribe here to Oilers Digest for any and all Oiler news. We will be back with a Bruins preview tomorrow afternoon, folks. Have yourselves a fantastic rest of the day. Take care. I'm Matt.